And these are the members of our South Simcoe 4-H squad.
Hi, I'm Caitlin from Lefroy.
Holly from Schaumburg. Grace from Stainer. Jess from Creemore. Brunley from Cookstone.
Hope from Stainer. Margaret from Beaton.
Be there or be square.
Carrick from Bradford.
John from Beaton.
Fergus from Egbert.
Shazam!
The Matador Land and Cattle Company Limited is of historical interest. This cattle empire was incorporated in 1882 by a group of Scottish commercial bankers whose only interest was raising beef cattle. The company was initially established on 1.5 million acres of leased land in western Texas, which then became the largest ranching empire in the world that expanded into Saskatchewan.
Matador was a well-known part of an explosion of co-op farms from 1945 to 1952. By 1946, there were 5 co-op farms incorporated. By 1950, 20 co-op farms with a total of 210 members were set up. The total number of co-op farms peaked from 32 at 1952.
There were spouses and children that resulted in a total of 30 to 50 people living on a co-op farm. Matador had 63 residents in total. The main purpose for the Matador Ranch was farmland that was reserved for the veterans. When the veterans came back from World War II, they had land to go to and start a family. The land is agriculture land and cattle farming.
Matador Ranch is some of the best native grassland in North America. Grassland covers areas in Alberta, Saskatchewan, and parts of the U.S., including Texas. In 1902, the ranch acquired 200,000-acre land in parts of North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, Alberta, and Saskatchewan. One of the main blocks of intact habit land is Matador grassland in southern Saskatchewan. The Matador name lived on as the first community pasture in Canada. Here are all of the main ranches that used to or are affiliated with Matador Ranch across southern Saskatchewan. Matador Community Pasture is located 2 miles south and 12 miles east of Kyle, Saskatchewan. Here is where we will be visiting on our exchange.
Matador Co-op in the 1940s was just starting to develop. It started after World War II by 17 demobilized veterans. In the late 1940s, they were granted 10,000 acres of grass prairie and a 33-year lease and an option to later purchase the property after 10 years, then with a rent payable at 1/7 the value of the crop. Later on, the co-op farm idea was losing interest and co-op farmers slowly decreased. Co-op memberships dropped by nearly 15% after 20 years. They farmed with livestock and in the early 1950s began to farm with machinery.
In the 1950s, they started to bring machinery in to help with farming. Before this, they had crop failures due to hail and droughts. Later was producing large quantities and high-quality grains, so much that they could not market or store it. As the weather improved and the right to purchase the lease started, the Matador farm experienced its first major crisis. 3 co-op members left and moved to a close town, Kyle, with their families. As more and more members left, production of co-op increased and machinery and pastures. 1949 they had 52 members. In 1964 they had 313. The co-op started increasing much more in the 1960s. Boom.
In the early 1960s, branding usually took a number of weeks because there was as many as 3,000 calves per year to be branded on the Matador Ranch. There were fewer children on the ranch in the 60s. In 1964, the number of children decreased from 24 to 9, which meant the school on the ranch had closed. By the end of the 60s, many of the children had grown up and left the ranch.
With its peak year in the 1950s, the Matador Farming Cooperative was a thriving community of about 1,000 farmers, sharing their resources and raising families. Today there are only 15 people still presiding on the ranch, and most of their assets have been sold off. They have a small commercial herd of cattle and produce mostly specialty crops such as durum.
Harrison Campbell, 1840 to 1911, a native of North Carolina, arrived in Texas in 1854. prior to his service in the Confederate Army and his subsequent work as a cattle driver. In 1879, with 4 other investors, Campbell launched what became the Matador Ranch. The Matador Cattle Company was a division of Koch Industries, headed by Fred Koch. After Koch's death in 1967, his sons Charles and David assumed management of the firm. The later company presidents were Sterling Varner in 1968, Tom Carey in 1969, Wes Stanford in 1975, and John Lincoln in the 1980s. Currently, the Matador Ranch in Saskatchewan, Kyle, is a provincially owned community pasture which consists of 7 members. The University of Saskatchewan also has a share in the Matador Ranch for ecological purposes.
I believe the pros and cons of the Matador Ranch system would be the 2 pros being that everybody worked together to create our big ranch, as well as it was a good opportunity for veterans to come home and have a job. The 2 cons would be that the people making the decisions was a small group instead of a larger group, as well as people started to not farm as much because less people were needed to farm the same amount of land.
Thanks for watching. We enjoyed learning about Matador Ranch and making this video for you. We are looking forward to visiting the Matador Community Pasture when we come to Kyle.